Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have an awesome guest. His name is Brian Knight, and Brian is the superintendent over at Liberty Local Schools District in Youngstown, Ohio. And Brian, thanks man for making some time for us today.
Mike, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Definitely awesome. Well, what was your journey like, Brian, to become the superintendent? That's such a big role with a lot of people looking up to you for, your guidance, your leadership, and your input. What was your journey like?
My journey was a crazy one. It really was. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in communications, and for about 4 years, I fumbled around, didn't know what I was doing, had little jobs here and there. And one day, I just decided it was time to hit the reset button because this wasn't working. I wasn't happy with myself. I tell students that the last job I had in finance was where I learned how to hate working. So I knew that there was a major issue there.
Mm.
So I was working at a child psych hospital here
Mm.
in Youngstown,
Oh wow.
and they needed, yeah, it was cool. They needed some people on the weekends, so I started working weekends, and I found that the best part of my week was the weekends, working with these kids and helping them out and doing what I can to help them to succeed and overcome some of the barriers that they were facing.
Mm.
So over time, people recognize like, hey, Brian really likes this. He's looking to do something. Let's offer him the opportunity to work with our kids on the educational pieces. So we were required to provide an hour and a half of instructional time. Rather, I created the lessons or the teachers created the lessons. Mind you, at this stage, I only have a sub license. So I'm working through this. I started doing inpatient and outpatient, and I just fell in love with it. So flash forward, unfortunately, the hospital closes down,
Mm.
and my boss at the time, he becomes principal of a community school here in Youngstown, and he
Hmm.
calls me up and says, "Hey, Brian, I need a dean of students. Are you interested?" Sure, yeah, let's do it. So had the opportunity to work. He's been Ray Palani's his name. He's been one of my mentors for years. It's still to this day. It's not unusual for me to pick up the phone and just have a casual conversation with him about what's going on with my life personally and professionally. But first day of school, the assistant principal doesn't show up.
Hmm.
And we're like, okay, what do we do? Called our superintendent, and she's like, well, what do you think? And Ray's like, Brian and I got it. We're good. So all of a sudden, I'm the dean of students and I'm doing some administrative roles with the assistant principal position. So flash forward a year to that, and they offered me an opportunity to run my own school
Hmm.
up in Painesville, Ohio, or down in Cincinnati, Ohio. Go up to Painesville. Painesville is a small school, but you could tell there was such a high need.
Hmm.
Kids, the teachers, they were just begging for leadership. Went down to Cincinnati, and I could have just sat down and ran the ship as is. So when I called my superintendent and said, I think I want to go to Painesville, she was shocked. She's like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. So I ended up spending a couple years in Painesville. And again, in Ohio, you don't need to have that principal, the administrator license. I realized I love doing this, so I better do something to back myself. So ended up going get my master's in administrative leadership, took the alternative principal route that Ohio offers to get my principal license. Did that for 6 years and then went into some district leadership opportunities, ended up missing the kids and ended up going back when most recently was a high school principal for a couple of years. And then our superintendent told me he was retiring and
Hmm.
it would be great if I would consider this. I took the classes that were needed, and in August of this year, I was offered the position, and I've embraced it ever since. And what I love about this role is I still have the relationship with my kids because all of our schools are on one campus. So it's not uncommon for me to be walking the halls, getting my fist bumps, my hugs, my high fives. And it's building a different relationship than I had as a principal with the kids, but still maintaining it. And the kids know that I'm very outgoing, that I support them, that I want to see them succeed, and getting that now with the teachers at the elementary school where I wasn't before, they're starting to see it. So everyone's getting the buy-in. So it's been a very cool journey. If anyone would have asked, like, Brian, where do you see yourself when you're 47 years old? I I would never in a million years thought that I was sitting here today.
That is so cool. That's awesome. And I love just the connection that you still have with the kids and your fist bumping and high fiving and you're building a relationship, right? That hey, you matter. I see you and you're important. And that's awesome. And when you were K-12, Brian, was there anything that you maybe struggled with? For me, it was depression and anxiety. I was bullied. Like there were just a lot. I struggled at K-12 big time. Was there anything that you maybe struggled with?
I really didn't. Most of my struggles happened after I was in school or
Hmm.
after I graduated from school, excuse me.
Okay.
I'd always wanted to be a teacher, and I actually received scholarships my senior year for future teachers. And I got to college we were on quarters at the time, not semesters. My first quarter, I got a B, 2 C's, and a D. And I'd never had grades like that. I went into my advisor and he looked at me and said, "You're not cut out for education."
Hmm.
And that was it. I said, "Okay, what should I do?" He's like, "Maybe go into business or something."
Hmm.
So I got knocked off my pedestal very hard
Hmm.
after I had graduated. And like grade school for me, it was all common, just trucking along, everything's fine, do what I need to do, you know. And then bam, I get to college, and that's where I hit the wall. And that I'm very thankful because of the pathway it took me to get to where I'm at now. But yeah, that was very hard for me,
Hmm.
especially when I got my degree and I felt like I just did it as quick as I could
Hmm.
just to get out.
Hmm.
And I was strapped for cash. I had 4 years worth of cash that I could use, and after that, so I was trying to get out in 4 years. So
Hmm.
that part was very challenging. And the other piece that actually was interesting for me was actually here within the Liberty School District. I have gotten every job that I ever applied for. That was always my running joke. If I apply for it, as long as I can get in front of somebody, I'll get that job. So when I interviewed at Liberty for the first time for their principal position, um, I got rejected.
Hmm.
And I really gave it my all in the interview. And I was like, okay, um, darn, well, thank you for the opportunity. Flash forward 2 years later, they need another principal. They call me back in.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, they must have really liked me. Now I'm going to get this position. And I was actually on a trip with my family and friends, and I got a call in Iceland at
Hmm.
the time. And they said, sorry, well, we're going in a different direction.
Hmm.
So twice the Liberty Local School District did not give me the opportunity. And when the third time rolled around, somebody had said, hey, they have an opening. Would you consider applying? And I said, I don't want to go in and I don't want the rejection again.
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't handle something like that.
Right.
So I came in, I interviewed. It was a new administrative leadership. It was my superintendent, who had retired, who preceded me. And when I walked out of there, I was like, well, whatever happens, happens. And then he called me and said, we'd like to offer you the opportunity. If we offer it, would you stop interviewing everywhere? And I said, yeah, there's only one place I applied for. I'm not going to get it. I didn't get a call. It was a month ago. And so I got this opportunity the next day that other district called. And it
Hmm.
really challenged me ethically.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy, but I stuck here. It worked out. I've always said everything happens for a reason, but I think that the important thing to remember in education, no matter what you're doing, everything could be going fine, and you could be doing what you need to do. And that's how I was, like I said, throughout K to 12, um, and liked and fined and just was my own person. Then as soon as I left that comfortable environment, bam, I let people start telling me things that I shouldn't have listened.
Hmm.
And that's where I learned a lot of my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And we all get told lies, and then if we're told them enough, sometimes we can even believe them, and it takes time to unlearn what we've learned and to challenge those lies with the truth.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate you sharing that. That's a great
yeah,
story.
absolutely. And what's been cool about that too is now the kids who are in K to 12,
Hmm.
I never tell them they can't do something.
Right.
I always tell them be realistic, be responsible, identify your pathway, especially when they're in high school.
Right.
Yeah, kids who have very high aspirations, I never would shoot them down because I personally was shot down.
Yeah.
But I always talk about what are your next steps? Where do you go from there? And
Hmm.
I think that that's very, very important.
100%. Yeah, encouraging each other, edifying each other, lifting each other up, 100%. And it's amazing. Almost everyone I'm blessed to talk with, like you, Brian, it's one common thread is we all take our pain or God takes our pain and turns it into our purpose, right? So that the pain, um, for me, being bullied now at programs for kids, for schools, that promotes, hey, let's be kind. It's cool. It's cool to be kind. Let's not bully each other. And so it's cool that you're doing that too. If you see a gift in someone, you're like, yeah, charge it, go for it. What are the next steps? Let's make this happen. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess what's working well, I mean, you just named one of them there. You're encouraging and lifting your students up, and that has a huge positive impact on their mental and emotional health. What are some other things you've seen working well within your school, a district, and then what are things just in a perfect world that you'd love to see more of, maybe next year?
So one of the big pieces that I brought was Ohio has what's called the whole child framework.
Mm,
And basically, it's where you create an environment where kids feel safe, they
mm,
feel valued, they feel respected, and they feel they can succeed. And that was one of the challenges at our high school was a lot of discipline issues,
mm,
a lot of fights, a lot
mm,
of skipped classes.
mm,
And when I came in, I said, guys, I just want to change up the environment. And I learned really quick. I had an amazing staff.
mm,
They were great people. They wanted, kids to be engaged. They wanted to embrace this environment. They just weren't sure how.
mm,
So over time, I'm very thankful that they bought in and we created that environment. We saw my first year suspensions in school and out of school drop 70%.
wow.
And it was yeah,
Yeah.
it's a stat that it's crazy. I still to this day
Yeah.
can't believe that we were able to accomplish that. But a lot of it was just sitting down and talking with kids and letting kids be kids and allowing them to make the mistakes and learn from those mistakes and say, it's quick and easy. I could throw you out of here right now and I don't have to worry about you. And then when you come back, if you screw up again, I'll throw you out again. Or you sit down and say, hey, let's talk about what you did. Let's talk about the mistake. What can you do in the future? When
Mm,
do you come to me? When do you come to another administrator for support and guidance to avoid doing that?
right.
And after a while, the kids really bought in. And even now, to walk through the high school and to see my assistant principal who became the principal and my dean of students who's there, and we have an amazing assistant principal who just started with us, they get it
Mm,
and they're still continuing that environment. And for the kids to say, yeah, it's still cool here, Mr. Knight, we like being here, that is so important.
yeah.
So just now we're trying to bring that over to our K-6 building. And it's the same thing. Amazing teachers, kids who want to be loved and supported. And just like, when I said walking around and getting those fist bumps, you sometimes have to stop, backpedal and say, I need some fist bumps. Who's going to help me out here? And really getting those with the kids, just starting from the very top and working your way all the way down and creating those environments, modeling those behaviors for employees to see. Everything improves. Academics, attendance improves when the kids want to be there.
Yeah, because they feel safe, they feel seen, they feel heard, and that they're cared for.
Yeah.
You're building relationships. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah. And our next step is really to engage our families to kind
Oh,
of feel the
perfect.
same
There you
way.
go. Yep.
Yeah. So if there's anything that I could see more of, it's definitely getting our families involved and continuing throughout the entire educational process for the child. It's very easy in kindergarten, everyone shows up. And
Yeah.
by about fourth grade, it starts to drop off a little bit. So find out why. What is it that we need to do? Do we need to change our programming so families can be engaged? Do we need to do daytime and
Mm,
evening programs?
yeah.
One thing that we're doing that this is all the credit in the world to our dean of students. He came up with this. We have families that work afternoon shift and
Mm,
they have kids that play sports. They're never able to see them.
mm,
So we reached out to another school, and this year we're actually going to play a basketball game at 11:30 in the morning. So all of those families who never get that chance, they get to come in. And then we also have a very large group of students that don't get the opportunity to come to games. Rather, they
mm.
can't afford it, or it's the evening, they can't get a ride or whatever. All the students from 7 to 12 are going to that game. So they're going to be able to see the game. So it's great for the kids. They feel they're part of something. The team is going to play in front of a crowd that they've never seen before. And then those families who never had that opportunity, who have to watch things on a replay or hear about it, they get to finally see their kids in action live. So it was an amazing idea. I hope it really takes off and we can do it for other sports in the future too.
Love it. Love it. That's so cool. And if there are any final words of encouragement or final thoughts that you'd like to share, it's all you, Brian.
No, I appreciate that. I think for superintendents, I have learned that everything comes through you, and
Hmm.
that's okay. But make the time to see kids.
Hmm.
That's the most important thing, because just walking down the hallways and seeing the smiles and looking at the artwork and just engaging with the kids can just make a lot of that go away.
Hmm.
I told a teacher just last week, I said, anything that's on an email can be done after the kids leave, but the kids are here now and I got to see the kiddos. So that's super important. And then just really in life, don't ever let anyone tell you no. Um, your pathway could be very unique like mine, and that's fine, because you learn so much in that process and going through everything. But don't ever just agree when somebody says you can't do something.
Yeah, amen to that. Brian Knight, thank you so much for carving out some time for us today and for sharing your journey. It was awesome. Great story. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I love sharing it, Mike, and thank you for having me here today.